In today's video, it's time to open up the Final Form files and talk about 3 exhibits that show Final Form debuts that make Kamen Riders real steppers. Since we've already scratched the surface of this topic with both Putoterra and Muteki videos, I feel it's time to go ahead and make that deep dive today. So with that out of the way, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get started. Alright, so this first one is also another highly requested one, and it's one that makes me laugh a lot more the second go round. By exposing Defense Security Mikage for being Roy Mute 001, aka Freeze, Shinosuke Tomari has been clapped in action. Not like clapped, but like he gone, he dead. Freeze has been working inside the police force for like a decade or so, manipulating the force using his power to freeze and shatter memories, whatever the fuck that means. When a man named Tomari Eisuke confronts him on this and is immune to his whole mind effect, this humiliation gives him the emotional awakening he wants while also becoming an important factor in Eisuke's death. Cut to the present, and he is now confronted by not only that man's son, but the new Kamen Rider under the management of Krim Steinbelt, aka Mr. Belt. And luckily for Freeze, Shinosuke is both competent enough to thwart his plans, but also able to beat his robot ass. At the crescendo of this squabble, the humiliation of getting his shit pushed in by the new Kamen Rider in Krim, plus having his plans ruined, pushes him into reaching his ultimate evolution, aka going Super Saiyan Roy Mute, because he discovered a specific portion of emotional intelligence. With this power, he proceeds to clap both Krim and Shinosuke in one blast, effectively killing Drive. With his death going public and the Roy Mutes posting "We Up" one on their IG posts, the Special Crimes Unit is quite possibly at their lowest moment. Then we find out that Shinosuke is in fact not dead, but because Mr. Belt fused his data into Shinosuke's mind and body, his body was put into a state of preservation, the same way Superman was after he got his ass waxed by Doomsday. Oh shit, does that mean Mr. Belt's the Eradicator? Look, anyway, with the decision to use the Try-to-Run shift car, which was originally made as a last resort attack, as a power supply to kickstart Krim and Shinosuke, and with Rina getting some last-minute calculations in, this results in the need for the Try-to-Run to go at least 200 kilometers an hour just to start the resurrection process. By the way, that's 124 miles an hour for all you niggas that live in the States. Anyway, we're taken to the field to get the process started with Kiriko behind the wheel. Freeze must have heard about this whole plan and shows up to stop this full force. No, not Kabuto, that's later. Chase is on the scene and holds Freeze off long enough for the project to work, but Freeze does manage to get a lick in and at first glance stop the process. However,
boy, ain't no fucking way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
Regardless of whatever jokes I will make later, this scene is hard as fuck. Stepping out of the car to announce your revival is fucking baller. In addition, he proceeds to show Freeze how he lived by putting that shit on.
Derive! Time to ride on!
But wait, there's more.
The greatness, the awesome sauce, the crest of ingenuity, the vertex of imagination.
Drive is now combined with the car to become Type Tritoron, and this form has got everybody fucked up. Especially Freeze, who is currently on the receiving end of belt to ass.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Freeze is able to push Tritoron back and wastes no time attempting a level 5 finish. As everyone freaks out about having dead Drive deja vu, Drive shows off one of their new abilities as Mr. Belt takes the wheel.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
So now Freeze is getting his ass whooped by Krim, which was not on his to-do list today. And to be fair, Freeze should probably be flabbergasted. He effectively was up 5 on his ops and was able to get the entire police force wrapped around his finger. So to see Drive come back like Black Panther, followed by Krim giving him the pots and pans while explaining how this new transformation was unexpected and not planned at all.
This, today, is one of the worst days that I've had in a long time. I'm not in the mood to play with anybody.
Anyway, Shinosuke gets back in control and continues to give Freeze the beaters. When Drive said, "Now I'm gonna hit you with all the shift cars," I would have used whatever version of heavy acceleration I had to get the fuck up out of there. But Freeze can't hear me though, so instead, he gotta get hit by a tire blend attack.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
The moment the shift cannon arrived in Drive's hands, I knew he was ready to wrap this shit up. And using the full power of Tritoron, Drive completely gets his get back by dropping 5 meters of a fucking car into Freeze's ass. Imagine losing to a nigga who came back to life because of a car going fast. You lost to a nigga doing a reverse Paul Walker. I'm sorry, that my bad, Slime. That was in terrible taste. I am too old to be that edgy. Drive Tritoron is a very cool final form in my opinion, and finding a way to implement the car itself into the form makes it both a logical conclusion from a design sense and a cool, unprecedented form for the story's plot. This form is only possible because of Mr. Belt's desire to protect Shinosuke from dying, since the death of both the Tomari men would be on his metaphorical hands. Since 001, aka Makage, aka Freeze, is not only the person who beat Krim and Proto Drive during the first outbreak, but is also partially responsible for the death of Shinosuke's father, and his actual death, making him the perfect wall for the two to face and eventually break through. The death and rebirth of Drive, in a way, is the Drive system's own version of the ultimate evolution of the Roimutes, as Krim's fear of losing Shinosuke defies logic to make the impossible possible, and not only revives him, but creates a form unprecedented in both power and design. In my Puto Terror video, I mentioned that Kamen Rider Final Forms usually do one of two things, either harmoniously work with their show's power system or hard counter it, making something impossible possible. What I didn't mention in that video is that this isn't a static rule, and many Rider Final Forms do both with that purpose in mind. This helps establish that the form in question is both plot relevant but very powerful. Tritoron Drive is just one of the many examples, as all of the shift cars plus the Tritoron car itself is needed to complete this form, making it harmonious, while also being a form that can effectively serve as a counter for most of the ultimate evolution Roimutes he will face later. If you want me to get really specific, I definitely wouldn't even call this a hard counter, as this counter is pretty much only from like a power standpoint, until Heart goes ultimate evolution and he becomes more than a match for the race car rider. So now that we've reached the finish line on this exhibit, it's time to move on to the next one, which means it's time to talk about Lambo's first Kamen Rider. If you've seen my videos on Ace from Yeats, then you know I strongly believe that this man was the blueprint, and Takahashi loved him some Kabuto. So for context, we're 28 episodes deep into Kabuto, and Tendo shows you just spilled the beans to Hiyori about how she's technically his sister, after she found out she was a worm, the main kaijin that the writers fight in the series. With this information now revealed, then her suddenly going missing, Tendo logs in on the idea that he is the only rider needed to protect Hiyori, so he must defeat all other riders and by extension, Zect. So he joins Zect and is given an assistant, and together they go around picking up the other Zectors in order for him to be the said last rider. By purchasing a sword, getting gifted Drake, no not that one, from Gon, and no not that one either, and getting Zabi with the assistance from Kickhopper of all people, the main Zectors are now in his possession, and he meets with the Zect director for an exchange. All of them for the Hyper Zector.
How the fuck you know this? How? Hold on, bro. How? How you? I'm saying, how? Like, talk to me, bro. You the police? Is you the LBI?
Oh, and by the way, the assistant given to him is actually an agent for Zect. So when Tendo starts running around talking about the Hyperzector, which is supposed to be shit he's not supposed to know, she's given the command to get her Agent 47 on. With the power of food and flavor though, she flips the Tendo's side fully and even steals the Hyperzector from the facility it was hidden in. She eventually is pursued by Zect and the worms at the same time, as the Hyperzector is a power both sides want. When Tendo and Kagami finally show up, all hell breaks loose, and it gets so crazy that the white worm sends Sister Soldier falling off a building, with the Hyperzector in tow. Kabuto follows in pursuit, and rather than grabbing the power-up, he saves Sister Soldier from splatting on the concrete. When the worm does grab it, the Zect director responds by blowing it up with rig explosions, making sure that no one can have it if he can't. As he gloats about destroying Kabuto's future, our Beetle Rider remembers that the show is called Kamen Rider Kabuto and not Laughing Nigga in Glasses, so he starts pulling out that main character power real quick. It's explained later that this Hyperzector came from across time to change the future, but in the moment, it just looks like Kabuto willed this shit into his hands, and with that power, Kabuto proceeds to put that shit on.
That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Now, as raw as this moment is, it might be a little too late, cause Gatak just got sent to the upper room, and we ain't got no try to run in this series. So how in the fuck is he gonna... Huh? Hyper what now?
But I'm not done yet.
Okay, it feels like I just slapped a bunch of clips together, but don't worry, I'll explain. With the power of Hyper Clock Up, Kabuto went back in time to the point where Gatak was about to be killed and prevented it by performing an Aura Farm intro. Sentai 5, if you made it to this part of the video, thank you for telling me to talk about Hyper Kabuto. I fell in love again. Kabuto was my first exposure to Kamen Rider, y'all. This nigga has done real damage to my taste in Rider, for real. Getting back to it, Kabuto wastes no time beating the absolute dog dookie piss out of the blue worm who annihilated his friend in a previous timeline.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Wasting no time, Kabuto goes for the Hyper Clock Up once more and proceeds to wrap this shit up. Whoo boy, I forgot how much I love looking at Kabuto. When it comes to final forms, Hyper Kabuto is arguably one of the most simple yet powerful final forms in the franchise. And I say simple positively. Early Heisei final forms had that kind of charm about them. Hyper Kabuto is cool because of our first introduction with him is him being a bystander in random episodes, only stepping in to affect the story's timeline as he sees fit with Hyper Clock Up. We technically know who that Kabuto is, but the story plays it like a mystery, like, ooh, maybe it's not Tendo in the suit, ooh, but we all saw Godspeed Love, so yeah, we know that's Tendo. If it's not clear, this is a hard counter final form, as the Zect Riders themselves are the counters to the worm, as both can use Clock Up. The Hyperzector, and by extension Hyper Clock Up, was made to challenge not only more powerful worms, but even affect time itself. Case in point, everything I've shown you, plus if you've seen Godspeed Love. More powerful worms will show up, and some can't even rival Kabuto, but that's another video for another time. Well, the clock is over for this exhibit, so now we can move on to our final one, and let's change the pace and talk about a fan favorite secondary writer. Damn, it's been a minute since I've talked about this passionate show about men. So Evo, still Mr. Stark at the time, not only has the Pandora's box, but has successfully built the Pandora Tower. So the boys plan on barging in and stop him from trying to take over the world. And between you and me, Banjo is really on one today. So much so that with the new knuckle his boyfriend made for him, he's even challenging Rogue. But when Rogue starts spilling the beans on how Banjo's dead girlfriend was all part of Stark's plan to get him stronger via emotional response, Banjo stutters for a moment. And since Rogue is pulling his punches because of his ulterior motive, he gives Sento and the gang enough info to find Stark and get to the Pandora box. For the boys, this fight has a lot of weight behind it because at this point in the series, Sento's conflicting identity, the death of Kazumi's friends, and Banjo's dead girlfriend is all directly related to this red bastard. So this get back is something the trio's been looking forward to for quite some time. So when they finally get to him, they put that shit on as Stark summons minions for 2/3 of the trio to fight. The only one left is Cross, who's prepared to go head to head with his daddy, my bad slime, that's spoilers, who's ready to go head to head with Stark. Since Stark mentions that the trans theme system is the equivalent of just putting on some clothes, this means that he's been sandbagging the boys for like 20 plus episodes, and this becomes more apparent as he keeps goading Cross to get stronger. Meanwhile, Cross realizes that this fight is not only to avenge his dead girlfriend, but to save Japan and the world itself from the plans of Bloodstark. But for Stark, this is a Tuesday, and using the power of the Pandora's box, he attempts to get the emotional response out of our boy. Grease comes in to help, but you know, this show low-key don't like Grease, so they had to get him out of this fight in the dirtiest way possible. Damn, turns out the box is connected to Bloodstark's power, so that means by using more of said cubicle power, Stark is able to give Cross the Kakashi combo of Kets and Mets and takes him right out of the fight. Before getting sent to the upper room, Build is able to catch an off-screen attack that puts him not only out of the fight, but makes him perfect for being Stark's punching bag. Now, the fight has gone 180, and Stark is berating Banjo about still being a weakling and how Sento's death will be the second time Banjo watched a loved one die in his face. However, unlike last time, Banjo isn't as helpless as he was, and he knows that in his heart that Sento's support has helped him get this far, and it's given him the strength to push towards the future and fight for something bigger than himself. Now Sento needs him more than ever, and rather than failing, he rises to the occasion with fire in his eyes. As if this was all according to Keikaku for Stark, he drops Sendo and sends an attack from the cube. But rather than killing our boy, something else happens.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
A never-before-seen full bottle was now born, and with the advice from the inventor to load said bottle into the knuckle as it turns into a driver attachment, oh man, I feel a debut coming.
But wait, there's more.
With this unexpected transformation, revealed to everyone conscious as Cross Magma, being somewhat expected by Stark, he sends more of his new smash toward him, but this is light work for our fiery boy.
That boy is good.
Cross wasn't lying about his soul being on fire, and apparently full of meter too, because these smash were getting barbecued by a flurry of meter combos. And now that they're gone, Cross calls ISO on Stark, and the two begin swapping hands. Though Cross is doing a fantastic job in the exchange, Stark is saying cryptic shit that doesn't feel right to me, but it is the perfect invitation for Cross to wrap this shit up. By cranking that driver for a finish, Cross leaps high into the air, followed by a group of fucking dragons made of fire, then drops a max meter of volcanic pack watch in Bloodstark's ass. With Cross somehow being able to activate Pandora's box, the boys are able to take it and Kazumi and get out of there, with the adventure ending in their victory. Now, as great as this dub is for the gang, Sento's worry about Banjo being able to use the Pandora's box is accented by Misora and Sawa spilling the beans about Banjo's backstory while they were swanging and banging earlier. His backstory is for us, the audience, and I've waited to talk about it until we got to this point in the video. So according to Sawa, our boy was born to one Banjo Yuri, who worked at a security firm with her husband. 23 years prior to the series, she was in charge of securing the probe that landed on Mars and returned. 13 years before Misora's dad would go to Mars. One day she fainted on the job and suddenly found out she was pregnant. A month later, her baby was born, as healthy as one would be during the normal 9 months of pregnancy, and that baby is the muscle gorilla we know today. Apparently, he had cellular material unlike anything ever seen before, whatever the fuck that means. So this ultimately leads to him being researched by the Namba Heavy Industries General Research Labs, aka the same place the Pandora's box would be studied at years later, with the person in charge of said research being Katsuragi Shinobu, the father of Takumi and technically our boy Sento because they're the same person. When they found all that non-human DNA within him while researching, they deduced that it was most likely alien DNA, and they made him show up regularly for checkups for years until his parents passed, most likely either not mentioning the DNA to him or altering his memory about it with each checkup. Eventually, he falls down the pipeline that brings him to us and this debut. Basawa's theory about an alien life form jumping into Yuri's body and pulling a Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho and inhabiting the baby she was pregnant with is not only fucking nuts, but actually correct. This final form debut is cool because not only does it show Banjo getting a super cool suit in response to his closest friend's life being put on the line, but it helps foreshadow the connection Banjo has with Bloodstar. And if I didn't make it clear, the use of the Pandora's box through Banjo and the reveal of an alien infecting Banjo's mom reveals that Stark was that alien, and those two are more on a familiar bond than one anticipated. When it comes to the debut moment itself, Cross Magma is fuego, pun intended. The magma aesthetic, the smoldering suit, and the use of the fiery attacks all help display Banjo's hot-headed yet passionate personality. Also, dragon-themed writers are normally associated with fire, with Ryuki, Wizard, and Saber being my best examples. This power has always been inside of Banjo, but he hasn't had the proper stimuli to push it out. Having him fight full force to protect his loved ones with the fear of losing them hanging overhead seems to be the proper way to do it. In terms of the overall story, it's half of the shoe drop that Stark, who I can finally call Evolt, and Banjo are two halves of the same whole. We just say that they're father and son, but they're more like V and Urizen from DMC5. Eventually, Evolt will get his genetic material out of Banjo, but that doesn't end their connections as it carries over into their bad father-son V-Cinema. I bet some of y'all don't know that in Eastern mythology, particularly in China and other Asian cultures, there's a strong connection between dragons and snakes, with snakes sometimes being referred to as little dragons. Dragons can embody either good fortune or great calamity, while snakes can embody fertility, the power of reproduction, or even be associated with stuff like rebirth and renewal from the ability to shed its skin. Hell, many cultures see dragons and snakes as related or even interchangeable, as the term serpent can be used for both of them, with real-world examples being the Yamata no Orochi of Shinto mythology and Jormungandr of Norse mythology. Now walk with me, I'm saying something here. Because the term serpent can be used to describe both a dragon and a snake, it perfectly works for both Evolt and Banjo. Evolt's sneaky and venomous nature fits in his visible snake aesthetic, while Banjo's hot-headedness and guardian nature fits his dragon aesthetic. Both fulfill their roles until the lines cross and Evolt is helping the boys, while Banjo is part of the problem for them, allowing them to align themselves with the serpent term and how interchangeable it can be. Evolt impregnating Banjo's mother and going through the many forms he did is all symbolic to the snake's connection to fertility and rebirth, with all of it resulting in Evolt getting his full power back, becoming the Dragon of Build, according to the hero's journey. Meanwhile, Banjo maintains his guardian nobility, and by virtue of being a benevolent being, he is constantly able to get back up and make the impossible possible. Hey, like a hard counter form. But yeah, man, that's the video. All three of these forms were unexpected to the plot, but something we were looking forward to for a while, and God did they deliver. If you want to support the channel in a personal way, there's links in the description, and if you need to spend money on toys, I highly recommend you go to Hobby Links Japan through my affiliate link, so when you buy toys through that, then you're supporting the channel as well. Most definitely this video is getting a part 2, either when I feel like it, or if this video gets 1,700 likes. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, give me $5.